So let's move on to question number 3. And
I
I'll
can
go
read
ahead and
that.
you're going
Oh,
to
go
read
ahead.
it. Thank you. No, go ahead. Yeah, no. Thank you.
In For the color of my mother, Cherríe Moraga states, I am a white girl gone brown to the blood color of my mother, speaking for her, while Moraga describes the reclamation of her mother's skin color as a political act and an exercise in connectivity and solidarity. Her statements remind me of, I'm not sure how to pronounce this name, Giyatri Spivak's argument in Can the, what is that? I'm sorry.
Subaltern, I think.
Subaltern Speak? This leads me to ask, what does it mean to speak for our mothers? How do you engage the risks? How do you describe the rewards? Oh, that's pretty.
Yes. Thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
Um, it it feels like a progression to me that each, each generation um, has a perception of having a little bit more freedom um, to do and say, compared to their mother. Um, I know if I talk to my mother, I know if my mother talked to her mother the way I talk to my mother, she'd get the backhand, get her mouth washed out with soap. And so she learned not to do it. She always did whatever she wanted to do, but she was very quiet about it. Um, and I did not have to fear the lash. Um, so, I felt free to say what I wanted to say the way I wanted to say it. But it's a freedom that my mother gave me, my parents gave me. But I wasn't the only one in my generation that was, you know, um, having this freedom of expression. It was a part of the zeitgeist.
Hmm.
I
Yes.
think I think for me, thank you, Michelle. I think for me when I read this question, I think more about the texture of our hair than I think about the color of our skin. Because I remember when I don't think I ever saw my mother's hair not straightened or under a wig or anything like that until she got to be a certain age. And then all of a sudden, after the Jerry curl failed, she came out with her own hair. And it was just so empowering to see that. And I remember when I stopped perming my hair. And it was just like this feeling of not that it was such a political statement, but it was just like this is what's beautiful to me, the way I my hair grows naturally. So so in all the years since I stopped with the perms, it just feels real good to start to feel like this. I'm sorry, they're doing this thing. The risk is that you may be rejected somewhere, and that's why you see all of these um, issues with now you can't discriminate based on hairstyle. So that's the risk, and I'm sure there are examples of that are based on skin tone. But for me, just hair was the thing that kind of popped out in reading this question.
Mhm. Thank you, Kim. Hmm.
Well, I did hazard an attempt at reading Can the Subaltern Speak? And I must say I reached for my dictionary a lot.
You're brave.
But someday I will revisit it when I have more time to go search concepts. But what I got from, juxtaposing that writing with this question is that, and then Moraga's statements in this writing is that she came to a point where she felt she had the ability to be the voice of her mother, which was the voice of the other. She did not wait for that permission to narrate her mother's experience. She took it because she was finally ready, right? She felt self-possessed enough to take that story that she'd learned by watching her mother through all her motions and machinations and subjugations, and then shared it with a circle of women. And then in the last part of what she says here, if I can find it quickly, I mean, she says, oh, good heavens. I thought I had it, but it's about, seeing her mother's head, passing her mother's head around, which is kind of, reminded me sort of a sci-fi semi-horror story, right? You're passing your mother's head around, but I know it means something much deeper than that. Through their hands, the head of my mother painted in clay colors, touching each carved feature, swollen eyes and mouth. They understand the explosion, the splitting open, contained within the fixed expression. They cradle her silence, nodding to me. So I'm taking that to mean that her mother was a victim of domestic violence. And so the swollen eyes and mouth, you know, these women in her circle that she's communicating with, she can, they can relate to that. And that even though her mother is silent, she's able to give her a voice this way. And so I guess finding your audience, being brave enough would be the risk. Who's going to listen to what you have to say? Are you afraid of someone not valuing the voice of your mother? Which is the voice of everyone that's gone before you? Is it, repetitive? And does that matter? Every person's story is unique. And so I think the reward of that would be to energize and inspire the next woman, or young person to tell your story, or whoever it is, that is their ancestor whose voice has not been heard. And so for me, that's the reward. You're inspiring somebody else because you were brave. You took the chance. You saw something in your mother's story, your parents' story that needed to be said. Maybe for you, to put words to it, to express it, maybe artistically, you know. And then somewhere out there is someone else who needed to hear that story to inspire them to do something else, to build on it. So that's what I put together from all of that,
Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm.
But I know Nicole can bring some outside stuff, can't she?
Yes.
She is a researcher extraordinaire. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah.